Today I am going to talk very specifically about research methodology. In the previous session, of course, on behalf for SIMS, I had discussed how to make dissertation simplified, and over a period of about 1.25 hours, I discussed some of the elementary things which you must follow. Today we are going to discuss very specifically the methodology which you must follow, and I am giving importance to this because on submission of your MBA thesis, when you are called for interview, that is to present your project report before the examiners, normally they will ask some specific questions which are common for all. First one is they will ask you to explain the title which is given, because they would have found some mistake in the title, or the title may be too exhaustive, or it may not include everything what it is to be covered in the title. Second one, normally they will ask you to indicate what type of research methodology which you have followed. For example, they will ask you, is it an analytical study? Is it a descriptive study? Evaluation study? Case study, etc. You must be very clear about which type of study you have followed. Now, this is very, very important because saying something and doing something else, that should not happen, because that will not satisfy the requirements of the examiners. So when you say case study, what exactly the case study is, whether you have followed the case study method or not, that you must be very sure. Similarly, analytical study, you must indicate whether it is really analytical study or it is a descriptive study. So today I am going to make it very clear. We are not going to use the word analytical study or descriptive study or survey method, or it is evaluation study, etc. Next one, very important question which normally the exams ask is about the sample methodology which you have followed. Normally in the case of MBA projects, we don't expect that students will follow the census method. It is only sample method. They will ask you a number of questions about the sample. For example, they will ask you what is meant by sample frame and what is your sample frame. They will ask you whether it is parabolic method or non-parabolic method. Then they'll ask you what type of sampling technology which you have followed, technique which you have followed. Then what is the sample size. So you should be very, very clear about all these factors. Then ultimately, what are the statistical tools which you have used? You must be in a position to substantiate the tools which are used and their relevance. Then ultimately, I have indicated the steps which are to be followed in the case of formulation of hypothesis and testing of hypothesis. Then, of course, most of the students will have doubt about how to write the first chapter, that is introductory chapter. I am indicating here how to write clearly the introductory chapter. Of course, after the introductory chapter, you are going to have number of chapters which is prescribed by the university. For example, normally we write design of the student as a second chapter. Third chapter will be profile of the company or the respondents. Then another two chapters, it is going to be about the actual study which I made. It could be evaluation, or it is analysis, or it could be descriptive studies. Ultimately, you are going to end with the last chapter, which is going to be called as summary of findings, conclusion, and suggestion. Here again, many students write summary of findings, suggestion, and conclusion. Be careful. First, it should be summary of findings, then conclusion, and then only you must write the suggestion. The sequence you must follow. Friends, I hope. Let us start with the today's talk. Now, as I told you, we are going to discuss the research methodology, very, very specific. What is that which we are going to cover under the research methodology? First one, I would like to indicate what is meant by research methodology, because even the examination also, the examiners may ask you what is the methodology which you have followed. Now, research methodology is the process of doing your project work or the research And in the project work, it is very, very essential that you are going to write or explain what you did and how you did it. Carefully understand. When you complete your process of research work, it is necessary that you are going to explain what you did and how you did it. This is indicating the research methodology, so that your work could be evaluated by the examiners in terms of reliability and validity. What is meant by this reliability? Please remember the case of project reports. Definitely two words which are very, very important is reliability and the validity. In Kannada, reliability is called as Vishwasa Ardhate. How far it is possible for you to believe what you have done. This belief depends on accuracy, precision, and consistency. Please remember, reliability, I repeat again, indicates how far one can believe. For example, you complete your project, how far people could believe. Even though it is for examination purposes, it is going to be a document, and people may ask you how far it is possible for you to accept it. But now definitely this acceptance depends upon how accurately you have completed your project work, what is the level of precision you have followed in that, and also whether there is consistency. What is meant by consistency? Saying in one place one thing and later on telling in other place a different thing. For example, income is one term. Consistency means throughout your study, income should be expressed either in terms of month or it should be in terms of years. In some places, explaining income in terms of months, and in other places, explaining in terms of annual income, that indicates that there is no consistency. Consistency means throughout your study, you must follow the same measurement tool. This is very, very important. So reliability indicates how far your work is acceptable. And secondly, validity. Validity is acceptability based on facts, truth, and arguments. And this is not just acceptance, acceptance with proof. Sapramana, in Kannada we say sapramana. And many times people will go for offices asking for getting the validity certificate. What is it? It is nothing but the certificate which is going to substantiate what you are saying is right. In the case of research methodology, these two terms are very, very important. First one, your project should be reliable. Second one, it should be accepted in the form of a proof. These two things are very, very essential. This requirement is fulfilled by explaining in detail the research methodology adopted by you. Second one, research methodology also refers to specific methods and techniques that are adopted in the process of collection, assembling, analyzing the data, including the tools of analysis. In fact, it is a blueprint of project or research work. And in many cases, this research methodology also used to call it as research design. So how the research design is going to work? This is an important thing which you must remember. So in the case of research methodology, what is expected of you? This is very, very important. Now, there are certain things which you must keep in mind while deciding about the research methodology. The first one is you must know very clearly what type of research work which you have taken up. See, for example, already I had told you whether it is a research work based on descriptive study, analytical study, or it is case study method, or it is survey method, etc. That it must be very, very clear. That should be indicated. Secondly, how you have collected the data, because without collecting the data, it is not possible for you to proceed. So what is the method which you adopted for collection of data? This is another thing which is very much required. Then how you have analyzed the data. So you must very specifically indicate the tools which are used for analysis and what is the necessity of using those tools. And please remember here, when you indicate the tool, you must also indicate why specifically you have used that particular tool in that particular research. And ultimately, you must indicate scientifically, rationally behave choosing these methods. That is, if somebody asks you, for example, if you have used a correlation study, and as an examiner, if I ask you why you have used correlation studies instead of regression studies or regression analysis, it should be possible for it to indicate that for this particular study, I'm establishing or trying to establish degree of relationship between two variables. That's why I have used the correlations like that. You must be in a position to indicate the idea behind choosing that particular method. Please note, while writing the research methodology, you are expected to write always in past tense because already you have followed this. That is the type of research, how you have collected the data, what are the tools which are used for analysis, everything it is already over. So when you write this particular chapter, that is something on research methodology, it should be always written in past tense. Sometimes students, they say, I will collect the data by survey method. Where is the question of I will collect the data? Already have collected the data, now you are writing the report. So you should say the data has been collected by survey method. You must be very, very careful while using whether the present tense or past tense or future tense. Research methodology describes the participants involved, that is the respondents, how many, how they were selected, and what is the method which you have followed for selection of the respondents. All these things you will have to cover. This is a very, very important thing which you must always keep in mind. The second one is where, how, and when will you gather primary data if applicable. Now, please remember, in the case of project work, are you going to make use of primary data or secondary data? That is very, very important. And normally, the examiners will appreciate if you include primary data. If the study is based on purely secondary data, they'll say you have done sitting at home everything and in what way you got the exposure. But in the case of finance students, normally it is very, very difficult to go to companies and collect the data. There, we accept that it should be based on secondary data only. But again, it is very, very essential that you are going to indicate which method you have followed. That is why you have depended only on secondary data, why you have not used the primary data. And even then, the examiners will ask you, these are the areas in which you could have used the primary data. You must be in a position to answer that question. That is, why you have used primary data or why you have not used the primary data. And if it is using of secondary data, it is also necessary that where you got the data, secondary data, and also how far the secondary data is relevant for your study. Many times it so happens the secondary data would have been collected by somebody for some other purpose sometime back, maybe 5 years or 10 years back. Now you are using that particular data today. So how far it is relevant, that you must explain. And while explaining, you may say that slight modification I have made or slight additional information I have made use of along with the secondary data, and thereby the limitation which was there in the earlier secondary data I have overcome by making use of this particular method. So you must be in a position to substantiate why you have used the secondary data and how you have overcome the limitations which are there in the secondary data. Then please remember, you must also go to the other one, that is important requirement, that when you must also remember that while talking about this particular research methodology, you should not forget that always gathering primary data, it becomes very, very difficult. And as I told you earlier, you may have to use second data. My simple suggestion is try to have a right blend of primary data and secondary data wherever it is possible. When it is not all possible, then only you must think of going for secondary data. Otherwise, don't go for secondary data. And secondary data will have always some limitations. Avoid that particular limitation by explaining how you overcome the limitations. Friends, now let us take into consideration what are the various methods which are available for research work. Now, there are two methods which are called as based on application. One is pure or basic research. Second one is applied research. Normally, in the case of MBA projects, we don't apply pure or applied research. Second one, research methodologies which are based on objectives. We have number of methods. I have indicated only 8 for the sake of convenience and also for having a summary. They are descriptive methods, exploratory, explanatory, correlational, causal, evaluation, analytical, and empirical. And based on inquiry mode, we have got quantitative and qualitative methods. And combination of this, we have got the mixed research. Now the problem is which method you are going to follow. This is very, very important. See, for example, students, when they're asked to write the methodology followed, they will say, this is analytical study. Same type of study, other students will say, it is evaluation study. Other students will say, it is survey method. So before you indicate which method you are following, you must be in a position to very clearly indicate the method which you have followed. Now, for example, in the case of evaluation method, the students will have to take into consideration indicating where they are going to adopt these evaluation methods. Now, a study which makes assessment of worth or merit of an activity or a function or a resource, including financial resources or efforts spent on achieving a goal, there, in order to assess whether that particular spending of resources is really resulted in achieving the goal, that could be studied through what is called as evaluation method. Now, friends, very briefly, I'll go ahead with indicating what are the basic or pure research and applied research. Basic research has a premise that something when you want to know, we adopt this particular method. It is primary academic in nature. Applied research is opposite, where you are going to study through your research solution or action. That is, solution means when there is a problem, you are going to try to solve that particular problem. Just like in the case of economics, we have got pure economics and applied economics. Applied economics talks about what the economic rules are going to result in the form of benefiting the citizens of the country. Similarly, in the case of applied research, we are going to try to get some solution or some action. Basic research is also known as fundamental or pure research, since it is mainly concerned with improvement of scientific knowledge. And purpose of this applied research is to know more about certain things which are on the reality basis or on the basis of the ground reality. Now, friends, further let us take into consideration exploratory and descriptive. So I don't want to waste my time. Anyway, the slides will be there. We can make use of that. I will explain only those which are important. For example, descriptive research. You can also indicate descriptive study in your projects. What is the descriptive research or project? The main goal of this type of research is to study by explaining theoretically or qualitatively a particular factor. There the quantities are not going to be used. You are going to be involved only in collection of certain information, describing certain things or some main functions or characteristics. So normally when you try to explain by description through the quality information, we call it as descriptive study. Now, next one, I would like to skip conclusive research. I will go for causal research. This is very, very important. This particular method is also called as explanatory research. It is investigation of cause and effect relationship. This is to determine causality, and it is very, very important to observe variation in the variable assumed to cause a change in the other variable. So, for example, if the government of India decides to increase the income tax or the corporate tax, what is the impact of that on the total spending, or what is the impact of that on the supply side or economic side of economy? This when you study, that is, government does something and what is the impact of that on other thing. That study, if we do it, it is called as causal research. Now, correlation research is something which you are going to take into consideration, where you are going to establish relation between two variables without the researcher controlling either of them. You are going to take up two variables, you try to establish relation between the two variables. Simplest example is, you take on one side the rainfall and the other side the agriculture production. Now, whether the agriculture production completely depends upon rainfall, or what is the degree up to which it is going to depend on rainfall, that could be studied through the correlation analysis. Next one, quantitative research is something where you are going to make use of numbers. You collect the data, you are going to analyze the data with statistical tools, whereas qualitative information is study is one where you are going to take into consideration discussing with people, gathering the information about a particular phenomena from the people, that is to the word of mouth, and ultimately you are going to arrive at a conclusion. For example, if you take into consideration a small issue like people going for shopping malls, what type of improvements are required so that more and more people are going to make use of shopping mall? This is a simple question. So there the question of quantitative analysis doesn't arise. You are going to ask the students, say, are you going to go to the shopping mall? And if they say yes, then what are the difficulties or limitations which you observe, and what are the areas in which you expect the improvement? They are going to suggest. It is open-ended questions. So this type of information we call it as qualitative, and research is qualitative research. Friends, now I will come to the very important one, that is analytical study. And many of the students are going to take up analytical study. What is this analytical study is? Analytical studies are the studies which identify and quantify. Please remember here, what you should not forget is, it is quantification. So identification and quantification of associations or facts. And then after the quantification, you are going to even test the hypothesis, identify causes, and determine whether the association exists between variables, such as between income and quantum of savings. So here, as the income increases, whether savings are going to increase or it is going to decrease. This is a study which you are going to call it as analytical study. Similarly, you are going to form a hypothesis. What is the hypothesis? You may say, as the income increases, savings does not increase. That may be the hypothesis which you are going to follow. Because people may not save money, they may spend a lot of money. So income of which level of people, whether you are going to take into consideration low income people or middle income or high income, that makes all the difference. So this is where you should be very, very clear about explain the units of your population or sample. Next one, we have got the case study. This is a research methodology that has commonly used in social sciences. Case studies are based on an in-depth investigation of single, individual or group or event to explore the causes of underlying principles. A case study is a descriptive and also explanatory analysis of person, group or event. So for example, many of the students, when they take up studying a particular company, it becomes a case study. For example, the labor turnover in XYZ company. You are studying the reasons or causes for the labor turnover, and you are not taking all the companies coming under a industry. You are going to take up only one particular company. Then it is automatically it is a case study. Now, similarly, when you want to collect the data from large number of people, you adopt what is called a survey method. A survey is defined as a research method used for collecting data from predetermined group of respondents to gain information and insights on various topics of interest. Surveys have a variety of purposes and can be carried out in many ways, depending on methodology chosen and the object to be achieved. For example, now you want to collect information about people who are investing money in equity market. Now, first one, what you are going to do is you are going to identify those that invest in the equity market. Then maybe suppose the brokers give you a list of, let us say, 2,000 members who are dealing with that particular broking company. Then out of that, you are going to select a sample. Let us say the sample is 200. Then what you are going to do is you are going to prepare the questionnaire, meet those 200, and you are going to get the information from them. This is the survey method. So many times we are going to make use of survey method, which could also be analytical. In that particular case, it is survey come analytical method. So you must decide which method you are going to follow for your study. Now, the one which is very, very important, which I told you earlier also, it is evaluation study. Evaluation research is used to determine the impact of social interventions. A social intervention is an action taken within social context designed to produce an integrated result. Say, you are going to evaluate the performance of a company. When you study the performance of a company, it becomes purely an evaluation study. Similarly, you are going to take into consideration evaluation of performance of a particular industry, and evaluation also could be, it could be in terms of production, or it could be marketing, or it is sales. So very specifically you are going to take into consideration one of the functions. So you can take up evaluation study for the entire company or a particular function. Friends, now I'm going to give you some of the simple examples, 2 or 3 examples I will give you, and also indicate what type of methodology which is followed in this case. See, for example, performance evaluation of Kalpataru Regional Rural Bank in Tumkuru district. This is the study which the students have taken up. Now, what type of study it is? This study is investigative in nature based on secondary data, because we are going to get the information only from the books which are already published by this particular bank, RRB. Now, it is a case study because you are taking only one organization, that is the RRB of Tumkur, and you are going to assess the performance, so it becomes purely a case study. Now the question is, are you going to depend upon only second data that is available from the books, or you are going to have some primary data also? In this particular case, performance evaluation could be basically studied through secondary data based on the information given by the company in the form of published information for the last 5 years or 10 years. And at the same time, you can also ask the customers of the particular bank about the performance of this particular bank, whether they are really satisfying the needs of the rural population or it is not. So a part of it could be in the form of primary data, and remaining part it could be in the form of secondary data, and the proportion could be 25 and 75%. It all depends upon your hard work. If it is possible, you can contact large number of people, and it may be 50-50%. That is 50% primary data and 50% secondary data. It all depends upon your efforts. Now I'll give you another study, a study of constituents of domestic savings and investment in urban cities with special focus on Bangalore and Hyderabad. Now please remember here, when you study the title, first one, it talks about the domestic savings and investments. Now, is it just domestic savings and investments? It is not. It talks about 2 urban cities, Hyderabad and Bangalore. So, one is domestic savings and investment. It is not one place, 2 places, Bangalore and Hyderabad. That means ultimately it could be collection of data in the form of survey method, and later on when the question of analysis comes, it could be analytical method. And what type of method? It could be a comparative analysis, because 2 cities you are taking into consideration, that Hyderabad and Bangalore. And in this particular case, if the variables are too many, for example, if the variables which you take into consideration is 30 or 40, at that time what you could do is you can go for adopting a factor analysis. What is factor analysis? When too many variables are there, 30-40 variables, is it possible for us to take up all the 30-40 variables and analyze and draw the conclusion? It becomes very difficult. So what you are going to do is, by the process of factor analysis, you are going to identify major and important factors or variables which you must go for in-depth study. So in this particular case, it is factor analysis. So depending upon for which one you are going to give importance, it could be survey method, it could be analytical method, it could be a comparative analysis, or it could be factor analysis method. So whether you are going to call it a survey method, or it is factor analysis method, or it is comparative analysis method, or analytical method, it all depends upon for which particular factor you are going to give importance. Okay, if you are giving importance for only comparative study, then you must say it is comparative analysis. If you are going to give in-depth analysis of how the people get income and how they are spending, then it becomes analytical study. And if it is eliminating too many factors or variables and identifying only few variables, then it is going to be factor analysis. So it all depends upon the researcher, and you must be in a position to decide which one you want to adopt. Okay, now one more I have taken. This is analysis of liquidity, profitability, risk and financial distress. A case study of Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited. Now see here, you could have used only one term, that is performance analysis of Reddy Laboratories. But why have indicated analysis of liquidity, profitability, risk and financial distress? Very specifically, you are going to take up only 4 variables here and you are going to complete your project work. So this type of study, we call it as exploratory, and why it is it is used for interpretation of already available information, and it lays particular emphasis on analysis and interpretation of existing and available information, and it make uses the secondary data. So here, please remember, analysis of liquidity, profitability, risk, or financial distress cannot be done through the primary data. It has to be done only through the secondary data. So what type of analysis it is? It is exploratory. You can use the word exploratory study. Now, friends, after deciding about this, that is, what is the methodology you are following, next stage is it is collection of data. Already you know the data collection comprises of 2 parts, that is primary data and secondary data. You know, primary data is data which is collected for the first time, which is going to be fresh in nature, and normally it is collected by the researcher with a respondent. Second data is already data which is available, and the accuracy of which is very difficult for us to say. The relevance of data also, it has to be verified. So when it is difficult for getting the primary data, we depend upon the second data. What you should not forget is primary data could be collected by 2 methods. One is census method and sample method. What is the census method? When you cover all the all the items in the universe or population, that particular method we call it as complete enumeration survey method, wherein each and every unit present in the universe or population is selected as part of the data. The universe might constitute a particular place, a group of people, or any specific locality, which is the complete set of items. See, for example, if you use the word student and you want to collect the information from the students, now the question is, suppose student means whether all the students who are studying in India, that question comes. Then you may say that, no, I am taking only students from Karnataka. Accepted. Students from Karnataka means, are you going to cover LKG student and up to PhD students? You may say, no, I am not going to cover. Then which student you are going to cover? Then you may say, I am going to cover only the LKG and UKG students. Accepted. This question is it urban students and rural students? Like that, there could be a number of questions which are going to come across, and you must be in a position to answer. And this is a difficult question in the case of primary data. And opposite of this is we have got the second data. Now, in the case of primary data, first method is, as I told you, census method, where you are going to collect information from each and every unit present in the universe or population, which is very difficult. And the other alternative method of collecting primary data, it is by sample method. What is this primary data by sample method? Instead of collecting information from all the units present in the universe, we are going to choose only a represented units, and based on the represented units, we are going to adopt the analysis. So in sampling, the data are collected from few representative items of the universe that best describe the characteristics of the entire population. So the sample should describe the characteristics of the entire population. That you must keep in mind. This method is used to overcome the limitations of census method, which is very costly, and it requires a lot of resources, both in terms of money as well as human resources, and many times it may not be possible also. Thus, the purpose of sampling is to draw inference about population by studying a small part of it, which is more convenient and less costly. Friends, don't forget, primary data could be collected by 2 methods. One is census method and sample method. Census method is one where you are going to collect information from all the units present in the universe or population, which is very difficult, costly. So what we adopt is we go for sample method. Now in the examination, when you say that I have adopted sample method, then they are going to ask you what is the sample frame and sample size. Before that, all of you know, primary data could be collected by observation, by interviewing, by mail survey, experimentation, simulation. All this you have learned in the earlier classes. I don't want to go into the details. Now, in the case of sampling, first one is, once again I repeat, sampling is a process used in collection of data in which a predetermined number of observations are taken from large population with an assumption that selected samples truly represent the population. This is first criteria which should be satisfied, that is, your sample should 100% be representative of the population or universe. Now, because of this, we always expect that a good sample should have three important characteristic features. One is it should be representative, second one it should be accurate, and third one it is precise. Okay, precision, that is accuracy along with the precision is expected. And one more we can add, that is the sample size should be accurate or it should be sufficient. Normally, you come across that larger the sample, more accurate is the result. But when you use the word larger, that is a relative term. How much large it should be? Is it 100 is a large, 200 is a large, 2000 is large? Is a relative term. So normally, depending upon the population which you decide, we have to decide what should be the sample size. It all depends upon the population. As I told you, student, when I use the word 2, it is a very, very big population. When I say LKG student, the size has come down. When I say LKG students of urban areas, still it has come down. LKG students of urban area living only in Bangalore urban district, then still it has come down. Later on, I may say that in the urban district, only in this particular area, still it is going to come down. Like that, you can bring down the size of the population according to your requirement. Friends, in the case of sampling, there are two methods. One is probability sampling, the other one is called as the non-probability sampling. What is this probability sampling? Probability sampling is a method in which from a large population, samples are chosen by a theory of probability in such a way that each and every unit present in the universe will have equal chance of being selected. Okay, simplest example which you can remember for this is, it is lottery. Thousands and thousands of people, not thousands, lakhs of people buy the lottery tickets. What is the intention? They know that they have equal chance of winning the lotteries. Okay, this is a clear example for going for probability sampling. That is, everyone who buys the ticket, he feels that he has got equal chance. But many times in our studies, it may not be possible for us to give equal chance. So what we do is, we go for what is called as the non-probability sampling method. In this sampling technique, in which researcher selects samples based on subjective judgment of the researcher rather than random. That is, subject is, I wanted to select sample only from this particular segment. As I told you, I want students of LKG studying only in urban district, Bangalore urban district. This is what we say. Already from the population, I have decided to come down, and my sample now has got a very, very small one. That means students studying in other areas, they do not have any chance, because my sample is only from urban area, that too from LKG students, so other students are completely excluded. It is a non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling method is one in which all the members of population do not have the equal chance, and most of the exploratory studies follow this particular method. And particularly when you want to make a pilot study, you are going to select only few. It is an example for non-probability sampling. Researchers normally use this method where it is not possible to draw random probability sampling due to time and cost consideration. Normally it is not all possible. Now in the case of probability method or probability sampling method, we have got simple random sampling, stratified, systematic, cluster, and multi-stage sampling. Theoretically in your class, the teachers would have explained what is this simple randoms or stratified, systematic, cluster, or multi-stage sampling. For example, now the example which I told you, from the student community coming down from national level to the state level to district level to taluk level to the local place, it is multi-stage sampling. Okay, so this is one method. The other one is non-probability sampling, where all the units will not have equal chance of being selected. It is convenient sampling, judgment sampling, or quota sampling. Normally in the case of MBA projects, we come across only a non-probability sampling method which is followed by the students, that is convenient method, or it could be a judgment or quota, because based on our convenience we are going to adopt a particular method. Friends, now the next question is, normally the examiners will ask you, what is the sampling frame? This is very, very important question which is normally asked by the examiners. A sampling frame is the source material or device from which a sample is drawn. It is list of all who come within a population who can be sampled, and may include individuals, households, institutions. It is a complete list of everyone or everything you want to study. So sample frame, again I am going to indicate, if you want to take into consideration politicians, okay, those are elected and those are existing MLAs, they become sampling frame for you. And out of that, you can select only a few MLAs for getting information from them. So for you, for example, you are going to study the performance of members of the legislature,
ಮುಕ್ತಾ
and for that
ಆಫ್
you are going
ಮಾಡೋದು.
to include only four or five MLAs for survey method. Then automatically your sampling frame is all the MLAs of a particular state. Out of that, you are going to select a sample. Then again, you may follow judgment sampling, that is, those who are accessible to you. You may meet them and you may get the information. That becomes, it is non-probable, but it is a sampling method wherein you are going to use your judgment as to whom you are going to meet. So here, it is always you are going to give importance to whether it is possible for it to collect the information or it is not possible for it to collect the information. The next one is always we take into consideration, again, the other question which is normally asked in the examination, that is the sample size. Sample size is, as I told you, frame is going to be very big. And out of the frame, you are going to select a few. That those who are selected or those units which you are going to select, that becomes sample size. Sample size is number of observations or units taken from population, that is from the sample frame, through which statistical inferences for the whole population are drawn. That is what is called as sample size. So sample frame could be 500, and out of 500 you are not going to select all, you may be selecting only 50, so your sample size becomes only 50. What is the basis of selection of that 50? That I will tell you later. So don't forget, a study that has sample size which is too small may produce inconclusive results and could also be considered unethical because research is not justifiable. For example, because of your convenience, sample frame is very big, but sample size is very, very small. That type of study is not considered to be a reliable one. It is not justifiable because you have selected very, very small sample. And small sample cannot represent the entire sample frame. That you must be very, very careful. Similarly, a study which has sample size which is too large will waste scarce resources and could expose more participants than the necessary to have any related risk. Thus, an appropriate determination of sample size used in a study is very, very important. Friends, I'll give a very simple example. In the Indian stock market, for example, if you take up Bombay Stock Exchange, the number of companies which are registered for buying and selling of securities in the market is around 7,000 companies. So the sample frame is 7,000. But what you should not forget is, when we calculate the Sensex, it is based on only 30 companies. Sensex represents only 30 companies. So where is 7,000? Where is 30 companies? So sample size is very, very small, whereas sample frame is very, very big. But what you should not forget is, number of studies have been made to assess whether this particular 30 companies are going to really represent the entire Bombay Stock Exchange. And fortunately for us, the studies have consistently revealed that these 30 companies which are selected based on market capitalization are really represent the whole market. So in some cases, sample size may be very small, sample frame may be very big, yet you are going to get accurate result. But we can't assume that everything it is going to be same. And particularly in the case of studies which are made in terms of business activities, it is very, very difficult. Now, let us take into consideration how we are going to select sample size. There is one particular formula given by Cochrane. It is called as Cochrane formula. The formula allows you to calculate an ideal sample size given a desired level of precision, desired confidence level, and estimated proportion of attribute present in population. Attribute is nothing but characteristic features or quality. Okay. Cochrane's formula is considered especially appropriate in situations where large populations are used. If the population is not large, a slight modification of formula is used. For example, this Cochrane formula is N0 is equal to Z square multiplied PQ divided by E square. Here E is the desired level of precision, that is margin of error which is required. Normally we say it is 5% level of significance or 10% level of significance. P is the estimated proportion of the population which has attribute in question. What is this attribute? For example, in a particular population, let us assume that 50% of people have the breakfast in the morning. So here P becomes 50%, Q becomes the remaining 50%. So 0.5 is P and 0.5 is Q. Suppose if we say in a particular population, only 25% of people will have breakfast in the morning, which means P value is going to be 0.25 and Q value will be 0.75. This you must keep in mind. Okay, the disk Q is always -1. And Z value is found in the table which is normally given for each of these P values. Okay. Now this particular formula is adopted. For example, let us assume that we are doing a study on inhabitants of a large town and want to find out how many households serve breakfast in the morning. We do not have much information on the subject to begin with. That is, what is the population or the universe we do not know, which means the sample frame we do not know. So we are going to assume that half of the families serve breakfast. This gives us maximum variability, that is P is equal to 0.5. And we want to have a level of significance or confidence 95%. And at least 5%, that is plus or minus 5% precision. A 95% constant level gives us Z value of 1.96, it is stable value. So when you simplify, incorporating those values, we are going to get 385. So 385 is the sample. So random sample of 385 households in our target population should be enough to give us the confidence level. Slightly, when you modify this formula, that is when you know the sample size, sample frame, the same formula is going to be modified slightly, where n is equal to n0, whole thing is divided by 1 plus n0 minus 1 divided by n. And please remember here, what is this n, capital N? N indicates now the sample frame which I have decided to be very, very small. Okay. So if the population which we are studying is small, we can modify the formula and calculate the sample size by making use of Cochran formula. And when you simplify this, you are going to get 278 as the sample size. Okay. So this is one method. And alternately, most of the students, when they do the project work, they do not take into consideration application of this particular formula. Blindly, they are going to decide about the sample size. Next one, we have to, let us assume that the data is collected based on the sample, and now we are going to prepare yourself for analysis. The first stage in research and data analysis is to make it ready for analysis so that normally data can be converted into something meaningful. Data preparation consists of three or four stages. First one, data validation, data editing, and data coding. This you can put it in the form of, first one, organizing the data, which means you are going to remove unwanted information from the wanted information, heterogeneous information from homogeneous information, and also information which are incomplete from the complete information. So here, first one is, it is organizing the data. As I told you, it is removing unwanted information from wanted information, inaccurate from accurate, etc. Second one, after editing the data, you are going to summarize the data based on number of categories or headings, so that it is possible for you to reduce the total data into it in the form of a table, so that you can apply the statistical tools for the analysis. This helps in finding patterns and themes in the data for easy identification. And third and the last stage is, it is a data analysis. That is how you are going to analyze the data which is already tabulated. Now normally we have a number of statistical tools which are used. I'm going to indicate only few. So for example, in the case of analysis, simplest one is we talk in terms of percentages or preparation of frequency tables. It is used to denote many times particular event which occurs, and researchers must and also use how these particular tables are going to be representative or useful. The next one is, normally we take into consideration making use of simple statistical tools like a mean, median, and more. Along with this, all of you know, that when we have the median or more, there is going to be a question of the accuracy, and for that we go for what is called as measures of dispersion or variation, wherein we use the word use the standard tools like range, variance, and standard deviation. Normally, standard deviation is one particular statistical tool which is very much used. And along with that, we may also use percentiles or quartiles, etc. Again, depending upon the requirement. One statistical tool which is very much used in almost all the studies, it is the correlation analysis, where you are going to try to establish relation between two or more variables. Normally, it is two variables. And by preparing the tabulations, you come across what is called as cross tabulation. This is also called as contingency tables. This is very, very popular. Constant tabulation is a method used to analyze the relationship between multiple variables. Suppose a provided data has got age and gender categories presented in rows and columns. Then two-dimensional cross tabulation helps in seamless data analysis and research by showing number of males and the number of females in each category. First one, please remember, we have taken into consideration age and gender, and second one, we take into consideration in the sex or gender, males and females in each category. Okay, in this particular case, we require the cross tabulation. Another important statistical tool which is used is regression. And all of you know, regression is nothing but finding value of one based on other known value. This is a very, very easy method, and many of the students, they follow this method. Only thing is, here you must be very clear about which are the independent variables and which are the dependent variables. Okay, unless you know which is a dependent variable and which is independent variable, it may not be possible for you to go for regression analysis. So in total, I tell you, normally, I don't say always, normally we expect standard deviation, coefficient of variation, then correlation, regression. Along with that, sometimes we also go for ANOVA test, that is analysis of variance. This is a statistical method which is used for testing the degree to which two or more variables differ in an experiment. A considerable degree of variation means the researcher findings are significant. In many contexts, ANOVA testing and variance analysis are going to be almost similar. Now, when the question of testing of hypothesis comes, normally there are 6 stages. First one, formulate the hypothesis, which you have done in the beginning itself. Set up a suitable significance level, whether it is 5% or 6 to 10%. Then determine suitable test statistic. And this test statistic is also a very, very important concept which people should not ignore or they should not forget. This test statistic helps in determining whether the hypothesis is to be rejected or it should be accepted. It is very much required for comparing your data with what is expected under null hypothesis. Now, next one, determine the critical region, perform computations and decision making. Decision making is ultimately what we are going to decide. Friends, I will skip the measuring tools. I will go to the last part of it, that is points to be kept in mind while writing the introduction. First one, please remember, introduction to your report is very, very important. This happens to be the first chapter, and when examiners or outsiders read, automatically they should be in a position to understand the quality of the report. And normally the temptation is to write the introductory chapter at the end. Please don't do it. In the beginning itself, that is after literature survey, you must be in a position to write the introductory chapter. Only thing is, you can afterwards slightly modify after the completion of your research work or the project work. If you make this first writing item, you immediately begin to focus on what you need to say and how you need to say. This is the advantage of writing the introduction in the beginning. The introduction should shape the remainder of the report and not the otherwise. A good introduction sets the tone and direction of the project. This you should not forget. It informs those who read what the research is about, presents the overall research objectives and specific research questions, and why these have been selected and pursued. And please remember, when you write it, you must include that specific business related problems or issues which you have taken up. First one. Second one, what is your project contribute to address this particular problem or issue? That is, when you do the project work, definitely the examiners will ask you in what way your project is useful. You must be in a position to indicate that in the introductory chapter itself. What contribution do you hope to make to help business with a problem or issue you have identified and addressed? The introduction may also present a summary of contents of remaining sections of the reader. And what is the checklist? What was the overall subject of your research? What was the main aim of your research? What specific business related questions or issues did you address? And why did you pursue these questions or issues in your research? These are the checklists which you are supposed to verify before you submit to writing of other chapters. And as I told you, by writing the other chapters, one of the chapter which you must write is the last chapter, that is summary of findings, conclusion, and suggestions. As I told you, the mistake which is committed by the students, it is they write summary of findings, suggestion, and conclusion. That is wrong. It should be conclusion and suggestion. While writing, so while writing this particular chapter, please write in the form of one paragraph. What is the title of your study? What are the objectives you have set? What is the hypothesis? One paragraph. Second paragraph, you must write. Please remember, I am telling you, this is how you are going to write the last chapter. That is the chapter in which you are going to write summary of findings, conclusion, suggestion. So when you write the summary should start with what is the title of the study and what is the relevance of the title, and also what are the objectives and hypotheses. Everything should be brief. Let us assume that this is the first paragraph. Second paragraph, you must explain what is the methodology which you have followed for collection of data, and what are the sources of data, or if it is second data, how we collected the secondary data. Then very briefly you must explain, for example, third chapter, you must explain what are the statistical tools which you have used. I repeat again, second paragraph is going to indicate what is the objectives, hypothesis, etc. Third one, how you have collected the data, and fourth one, it should indicate what are the statistical tools which you have used. All are very, very simple, small paragraphs, not paged together, maybe half a page or quarter page, that's all, not more than that. Then after that, you must start, the first objective of my study was this, you must write the objective. Then below that, you must write how you got the data collected, and what is the method you adopted for analysis, and ultimately what is the findings of that particular objective. So first objective should have the findings. Similarly, go for the second objective. Again, indicate what is the sources of data, what is the methodology you adopted for analysis, and what is ultimately your findings. Like that, suppose you have got 5 objectives or 6 objectives. For all the objectives individually, you must have the answers. And ultimately, you must say that summating all the 5 or 6 objectives, the overall the findings of the study is this. Okay, so all this should be in the last chapter. After that, you are going to say conclusion. From the findings, you are going to conclude. For example, if it is evaluation of performance of rural regional bank, then what is the conclusion? Conclusion is because of inadequate number of staff members allotted to each of the branches, the functioning of the branch is considered to be ineffective, and this is indicated by not only the respondents, even the staff members of the bank. This is the conclusion. Then what is the suggestion? You must suggest, based on the turnover, based on the number of clients attending, and based on number of accounts, based on the total debits, total credits, etc., the branch should have so many people. Okay, you may indicate that this particular branch has got only 5 members and it should be increased because if the clients are waiting, account holders are waiting, and they are not at all happy. So you must draw the conclusion. Okay, after conclusion, you must suggest. Suggestion is based on the work which is done in the each of the branch, the number of members of the staff should either be increased or decreased. And there you can quote, in the case of public sector banks, what is the method followed? In the case of private sector banks, what is the method followed? In the case of banks where the digital banking is more, what is the staff pattern, etc. You can explain that, and ultimately you must conclude that these are the suggestions. And further, for enhancing the justifiability of this particular study, the further study is suggested in this particular area. You can suggest what is the area in which further studies could be made. Okay, and ultimately, don't express any thanks in the last chapter. It is not your duty. That should be done only in the case of writing of acknowledgement. And while writing the acknowledgement, please acknowledge all your teachers and all the members of the public or the companies who have helped you to complete the project. And the best way of thanking them is acknowledging them in your acknowledgement. I hope I have satisfied your requirement.
Sir, on behalf of the students, shall I ask the question?
So,
Yes, sir. Sir, can you explain the difference between organization profile and industry profile and the respondent profiles?
say here is a question. One is, what is this industry profile? Then organization profile, and then profile of the respondents. See, normally I would go to one more extent. At the highest level, at the macro level, the profile of the country, economic profile of the country, then profile of the industry which you have selected, then profile of the firm or the organization, and last one, that is profile of the respondents. Because it has to come sequentially. Why it has to cover the macroeconomic issues is, when the macro level changes are taking place, ultimately it is going to affect the organizations as well as the individuals. See, for example, all of you know, the last 1 year, the government is putting all the best efforts to see that the economy does not result in the form of downward trend. And even though people say that it is entering into recession, government said we are doing all the required things to see that the economy grows. But unfortunately, there's a lot of doubt whether the economy is growing or it has become standstill. Okay, and of course, after the COVID, everyone knows that the economy is showing a declining trend. This picture is very much required because the performance of industry, performance organization, and also the opinion of the response depend upon what is happening at the macro level. So briefly, you must touch upon the macro level changes which are taking place at the particular point of time. For example, suppose if you are writing a project report after 6 months or 1 year, the economic scenario may not be same. Because of the efforts of the government, the economy might have improved or might improve substantially. So at that time, we are not going to present a depressed picture. We are going to present a picture which is going to indicate that the economy is growing very, very fast. So that is first one. Industry is, for example, number of firms put together, we call it as industry. For example, automobile industry, if you take into consideration, automobile industry is all the companies producing automobiles, whether it is four-wheeler or six-wheeler trucks, or it is three-wheeler or two-wheeler, all they are called as automobile industry. So there could be 200 to 300 small as well as big companies all put together, which becomes an industry. So whether the industry is growing or industry is having problem, that also you must indicate. See, for example, in the last 2 months in our country, that is March, April, and as well as May 15th, the automobile industry is one industry which has been affected very, very seriously. And in fact, last month, that is April, it is reported that not in one four-wheeler has been sold by a number of companies. So this particular industry's profile, it is very, very essential that you are going to give. And at the same time, you should not forget, industry profile will not remain same. For example, in the case of food industry is one industry which is showing growth even when we have got COVID problem. In fact, some of the companies which are selling the packed food, they are having increased growth during the COVID period rather than showing a declining trend. So industry trend is very, very essential. Now what you are going to do is, from industry, one of the companies you are going to select. So you must take up the company's profile. What is that company's profile means? For example, you take up one company from the industry, automobile industry, it is a XYZ company. So when you take up XYZ company, you should start with when the company was promoted, who are the promoters, whether it is a public sector industry or it is a private sector industry or it is a joint sector, what is the share capital and what is its financial performance over a period of last 5 years, what are the various types of automobiles they are manufacturing, and what is their position in the market, what is the market share enjoyed by them, and are they importing or exporting? If they are exporting, to which are the countries which are exporting, and what is their financial position? What is the growth in the sales, growth in the profit, and growth in the number of employees working, and what is the satisfaction level of employees, and whether the consumers or the buyers of that particular automobiles are happy. All this should come in the form of the organization profile. And ultimately, when you take into consideration respondents profile, we call it as demographic profile of the respondents. They normally we take into consideration age and sex, then qualification, that is the education qualification, occupancy, residential status we take into consideration. Then also we consider whether they have the ancestral property, or whether they have invested in uh, savings or in the capital market or in the money market. Then what is the family size we take into consideration, what is the age of the children, that also we take into consideration, because the children's age makes a lot of difference in the case of savings. Then family size means we also take into consideration the age of the family members. If aged parents are there, then automatically expenses will be more. And along with that, whether the spouse is also working or not. And when we ask whether they are staying in the own house or rented house, that indicates how much of money they are saving or how much of money they are contributing towards the housing loan. Okay. And tomorrow, if they have, let us say, two daughters, then what is the marriage expenses which are required? So the entire demographic profile of the respondents, they are going to collect the information. Then the question is whether that particular respondent is really useful to you or not. Say, for example, you may be asking me whether I am making use of the mobile banking. First of all, you must know whether I have a bank account or not, whether that particular bank has got the mobile transactions or not. Without knowing that, for example, you are going to ask a bank account holder from RRB, that is Regional Rural Bank, when they do not have the software or when they have not used digital banking, what is the fun in including me as an account holder in RRB for your study? Okay, so when you consider the profile, you must consider whether he is a fit person to give you information, whether he has the information or not. What is the fun in including somebody who doesn't know anything about that? For example, what is the impact of having liquor? If you ask me that question, when I never had the experience of having a liquor, how can I give the answer whether liquor is good or bad? Whatever I have read in the newspapers or whatever I heard, I may be in a position to disclose. But what is my personal experience? When I have not at all used a liquor, I can't give. So I should be excluded from the purview of the respondent. Similarly, if you want to collect information from respondents who have invested money in the equity market, first of all, you must ask whether they have invested in the equity market. Generally, you must include, submit, or they administer the questions, you can get the information. When I have not at all bothered, or when I do not know anything about the capital market, and if you include me as a respondent, what is the use? So it is always necessary that you must identify the respondents based on whether they are in a position to give the information or not. Okay, without that, it is not all.
Yes, sir. Shall I ask one more question, sir? What are the precautions required in the interpretation of data, sir?
See, many times the students, while interpreting the data, I have observed as a teacher and having evaluated for a number of years MBA projects, they will study something. When the question of interpretation comes, all of a sudden from sky they get the information and they will say that this is because of this and that. Okay, any interpretation which you are going to make, it should be based on the data which you have collected, the data which you have analyzed, and there should be a proof. This is what we say reliability. Okay, reliability is where when only when sufficient documentary evidence is available. So when the evidence is not there, how can you draw a conclusion? So conclusion should be based on purely the inference which you draw from statistics. Okay. Without that, it is not possible for you to draw any conclusion. It should be substantiated. Okay. If somebody asks you, you have drawn this particular conclusion. What is that conclusion? Taking liquors is going to avoid some of the diseases. Okay. You have indicated. My study indicates that people who take their drinks, they do not suffer from these diseases. Accepted. I will ask immediate question. What is the proof for your statement? Then what you should say, sir, I have collected the information from these people, and these are the people, 100 people who do not take any drinks, and 100 people, those who take the drinks, and 100 people, those who do not take the drinks, they suffer from these diseases. Age is same, all of them, they belong to 40 and 50 years only. All are male, and their economic condition, social condition, everything same. And these 100 people who do not take the drinks, they have these diseases. Same 100 people who do take regular drinks, they do not have these diseases. So what it indicates is, definitely my conclusion is, those who take the drinks, they do not suffer from the disease. But immediately what you must do is, you must also add a proviso. Proviso is, I have studied only 100 people. To draw this particular conclusion and making it a generalized statement, a bigger study is required where the sample size should be much bigger than what I have concluded or what I have taken. Like that, it is necessary that you are going to prove with your data. Without the data, it is not at all acceptable. That is why that is why we say research methodology should always be based on two things. One is validation, the other one is reliability. If it doesn't satisfy these two, it means that you can't draw any generalization which could be accepted by others.
Sir, the last question, sir. Because of the freelance study, construction of the questionnaire, especially for the data collection. So, what is the standard we need to maintain, sir?
See, when you want to prepare a questionnaire, what is the standard which you must follow? Please remember, the simplest answer for this question is, when you make the literature survey, what is the importance of literature survey is this: somebody would have studied, if not in our country, somebody would have studied in other countries. You must study similar type of studies which are made, and what are the various questions which have raised, and keeping that as the basis, you must formulate your own questionnaire. Okay, there will be somewhere questionnaire is available. If the question is not available, at least number of questions which they have raised for that particular study would be there. You must convert that questions into a questionnaire. Okay, this is where the literature survey really come into picture, and it is going to help you to prepare a good questionnaire. That is one. Secondly, incidentally, I want to tell you, when you have got 4 or 5 objectives, normally what students do is, they prepare only one question for all. That is wrong. According to me, first objective, what are the relevant questions which are required for the first objective, and you must formulate questionnaire for first objectives. That should be one questionnaire. Second objective, what are the relevant questions? Prepare a questionnaire for the second objective. Like that, you must have even the question also based on objectives. Then only when you analyze, it is possible for it to come out with conclusion for each of the objectives. Many times when you prepare only one questionnaire, some of the important objectives may not be covered in the questionnaire, and ultimately when you want to interpret, you will not have any answer because you have not collected the data for that. So collection of data should be based on the objectives which have already formulated. That means for each of the objectives, you must raise the questions, convert the questions in the form of the questions which could be administered to the respondents, and get the information. Then only it is possible for you to analyze and draw conclusion for each of the objectives. Otherwise, it is not all possible. Okay, so questionnaire should be based on objectives. That you should not forget. If I got 6 objectives, definitely I suggest you must have 6 questionnaires. Only thing is that 6 questionnaires could be clubbed. 3 could be for one group, another 3 for the other group. Okay, yeah, there is no need to have 6 questionnaires separately. 6 questionnaire you prepare, you can club it and make it only 2 groups, so that administration becomes easy.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, friends. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope I have contributed at least 1% for the existing knowledge which you have. Thank you very much.